More on the al-Shabaab threat against U.S. Western malls. I'm joined by David Gartenstein-Ross. He's a senior fellow from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. David, thanks for being on the program.
My pleasure.
So how big of a threat is al-Shabaab to United States specifically and its allies?
Shabaab right now is concentrated on the Horn of Africa, where it has its base of operations. It's carried out attacks in Somalia, in Kenya, and in neighboring countries, specifically Uganda and Djibouti. It hasn't carried out attacks in the West, not successfully, and there really is only one attempt that's been linked to al-Shabaab. This might not be because they lack capability, but have just so far lacked the intention. So it's a little bit hard to answer that question, because all we know is that their record so far is one where their attempts have been zero.
So do you think that's partly the reason they're doing this now, issuing this video? Is it publicity? Is it attention they're after? Because if it is, they're getting plenty of publicity and attention.
I'm sure it's both, and I'm sure one other reason is to scare Americans and others, including Canadians, from going into malls. One thing that jihadist groups have often done is they'll focus in on economic targets, airplanes, for example, mass transit systems, and even the threat that there could be an attack is something that will cause security to increase, thus inconveniencing people. It'll cause, thus, money to be expended on security. Things like that are little victories in what's overall to many of these groups is a war of attrition.
The Department of Homeland Security head Jay Johnson said shoppers should be vigilant, and the FBI said, well, no credible threat. You know, are we getting mixed messages here? Are Americans, what are they supposed to do? Can they go shopping? Can we go to the malls? Should we feel safe?
Easy answer. Americans can go shopping. I think those two messages are consistent, that there's no credible threat, but especially because, as the previous segment said, this seems designed to encourage lone wolf attacks. It does make sense to be vigilant, especially when there's a specific attack that's fingering a mall. Look, that's just the age that we live in. You could see these various lone wolf attacks that have occurred at so many different places in the world. At a Jewish museum in Brussels, at a chocolate shop in Sydney, Australia, then these attacks that occurred in Canada on back-to-back days. It does make sense to be vigilant when you have terrorists who are trying to strike, but at the same time, I don't think it's a mixed message to say that even while being vigilant, let's not be paranoid, let's not be scared, let's not make them change the way we live our lives.
Do you think it's a matter of time before we see metal detectors at U.S. malls?
That's an excellent question. I don't think it's inevitable because metal detectors create a great inconvenience in going into a mall. Part of the appeal of a mall is it's a place that's easy to go into and socialize, and a metal detector heightens the idea that there's a security threat. I think that would be a very big step for malls to take.
Should that be happening right now before something awful happens?
What they've been focusing on is the response to an attack. It's really hard to say because there's a cost to putting in metal detectors. At some point, you protect the mall so much that you actually kill the mall.
And finally, David, do you think we will ever see the kind of attack we saw at the Westgate Mall in Nairobi, Kenya? Can that happen in London? Can that happen in Washington?
It's certainly possible. It's difficult to protect all of your soft targets. And you've had terrorist cells in the United States. That's something which has been talked about for quite some time. Even the Tom Clancy novel, Teeth of the Tiger, used that as the fundamental premise of the book. So, I hope not, but at the same time, there are a lot of attractive targets for terrorists, and it's a long game to say, will something ever happen?
All right, well, we certainly hope it never does. Thank you. Thank you so much, David Gartenstein-Ross. We appreciate your time.